beginning at least with the Anti-Federalists and the Federalists during the ratification debates of the Constitution, there's been a great disparity between those who believe that the states should be dominant in control of our country and those who believe that the federal government should be in control of our country. This question of states' rights versus the power of the federal government again became very important during the Jackson administration with what became known as the Nullification crisis. The Nullification crisis centered around a tariff in 1828, a tariff that protected northern industrial goods at the cost of southern agricultural goods and the exportation of southern cotton. More on that later. What it comes down to, though, is a question of the Constitution. Do the states have the power to nullify or veto federal law? John Calhoun, the former Vice President of the United States, represented the Southern view in this nullification crisis. Indeed, Calhoun resigned the vice presidency so that he could take up the cause against the government of the United States. In the South Carolina exposition on nullification written by Calhoun, he posited several main ideas. One, Calhoun in the exposition said that if a majority of states voted to nullify a federal law, then that law was effectively vetoed by the states. However, if 3/4 of all states upheld a federal law, then any state remained law, but that any states who voted to nullify the law could secede from the Union. Again, this exposition on nullification was written in response to the Tariff of 1828. There are several reasons Southerners were against it. One, only northern industrial goods were tariff protected. Thus, Southerners had to pay more because there was a lack of competition for industrial goods, thus allowing northern factories to increase the price of their goods. And secondly, this shut down, to some extent, British exports of manufactured goods into the United States. Thus, if the British were not selling in the United States, they lacked the funds to purchase southern cotton. Additionally, lastly, southern cotton was not protected. Southern agricultural goods were not protected in the Tariff of 1828 that Southerners began to call the Tariff of Abominations. Importantly, some Southerners also saw this in analogy that if the Northerners could do this with tariffs, if they could do this with trade, then they also could at some time in the future do that with slavery, simply by Northern control of Congress, abolish slavery. So the Southerners took a very strong stand against this Tariff of Abominations. As one would expect, President Jackson's response was very forceful and straightforward. Although Congress did eventually lower the industrial tariffs of the so-called Tariff of Abominations, Jackson also got Congress to pass the Force Act. The Force Act provided that the federal government can use force to uphold federal laws anytime they want. Jackson is said to have mentioned that he would send federal troops down into the South to hang every nullificationist, and that he would propose they start with John C. Calhoun. This idea of federal troops to uphold federal law or to provide for domestic tranquility had already been evidenced in the Whiskey Rebellion by George Washington, and would later be shown again multiple times during the modern civil rights movement, such as when President Eisenhower federalized the Arkansas National Guard and sent the 101st Airborne to Little Rock, Arkansas's Central High School to protect the Little Rock Nine.